South African Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago was addressing the Kgalema Motlanthe Foundation in Drakensberg, and he was speaking with the Growth Forum as well. And he made an assertion that the South African rand is weakened, right? I suppose anybody can say that. But he went as far as saying that it should be round about 7 rand to the dollar. But for reasons that he went on to explain, it isn't. Now, this is going to be a bit of a technical discussion because obviously this involves essentially what the Reserve Bank does, which is currency management and also the inflation target to make sure that things stay within a certain bracket. So let me try and explain this. If we were in a household, all of us living in just one house, and we woke up one day and we decided that we are going to weaken the currency domestically, so within the house, by 66%, which means each 1 rand that you have will now be 33 cents. It wouldn't really affect anybody within the house because if we're trading amongst each other, whatever Juliet was selling for 1 rand, she would now sell for just 3 rand, and vice versa. Whatever you had been selling maybe for 3 rand, you then sell for 9 rand, etc. and so on, right? So it balances out. The problem would come if you wanted to leave the house and go buy from next door. Because there, they've got no such agreement. And so there, you would be 66% poorer. And if they came from next door and came here, they would be able to buy a lot more in our house because, as you can imagine, things would be a lot cheaper. They could come with just 1 rand and buy 3 rand worth of things. Or come with just 33 cents and buy 1 rand worth of things. This is essentially why some countries choose to weaken their currency. Like, for example, China was the first country that I personally remember speaking about, and they said that their currency was deliberately weakened, which means that the intrinsic value is not what it is that they portray. And this is what Lesetja Kganyago is saying. Now, this is before we get to the issue of currency manipulation, because we also know that for a fact that banks in South Africa were manipulating the currency and weakening it so as to come across that South Africa is in a tumultuous state, unstable, etc. and so on. I think this 7 rand figure that he speaks of, where he says the rand should be, it'll track back to around about 2005, 2006, right? So essentially 2 decades ago, where the president would have been Thabo Mbeki, who himself is an economist, right? Now, you've got to ask yourself, if the person who is the governor of the Reserve Bank, and the Reserve Bank is in charge of currency, and I can imagine that these guys do their job well because they haven't proven otherwise over the last 3 decades, right? And they've got access to information and research that points to such, then why is it that we have a rand that is sitting at about 18 something to the dollar? That's the first thing. Secondly, a lot of people speak about the rand being volatile. It certainly was volatile back in the day when it was at around 7 rand something against the dollar. These days, not so much. I remember during the Zuma days, we used to hear about Moody's, S&P, and these are all ratings agencies. We couldn't sneeze without the rand during the Twalata. These days, there's a lot happening. I just told you, last week we couldn't get to the story because there was so much happening. Rand hasn't even flinched. You see? So the question you've got to ask yourself is, do you believe Lesetja Kganyago when he says this? And what does that really, really mean? I know it's going to get into conspiracy theories. A lot of people are going to be like, hey, you know what, Sizwe? It could be a conspiracy, but here you have a scholar of economics. In fact, the person who is in charge of the SARB saying it now. What are your thoughts, Mbali?
I was avoiding even answering. I'm just like, look, I'm not a business reporter.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. You're certainly right. And this draws me back to the Zuma era, Sizwe. And, all we ever knew about was anything political affected the rand. And for me, it baffles me right now when we had, the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee. We also have the Madlanga Commission, but we've not seen any impact. And also, it even shocks me further that on Friday we had, we were removed from being grey listed. So with all this corruption taking place and what we do know now, and essentially seeing the state our country is in, and really the rand has not devalued one bit.
Strategically speaking, by the way, it's not a bad thing to have a devalued currency, right? Because another part of the economy, more than just domestic, is imports and exports. So as you can imagine, if you have a devalued currency, people that are coming from, I don't know, the US, for example, they'll find it a lot cheaper to come to South Africa and buy goods. It'll be very beneficial to those of us who export goods, for example, from South Africa, if the currency is devalued, because then people can buy more of those goods. The problem is, it may then start to affect people in the country adversely. So here's an example. If I am an American and I have got $1 million, in America, you really can't do much with $1 million. Yeah, you live comfortably, but you're not going to be super rich. If you come to South Africa with $1 million, you're going to have 18 million rand. Now you're talking a different story. And this is why, for example, property prices in Cape Town are so high, because of the weakened currency. And it means that people that are in the country are not able to compete with those that are coming from outside. That's where the danger is. That's where the problem is. But when it comes to foreign direct investment, which assumably is good for the country, that's good. That's not an issue. It attracts all of that. It attracts tourism. Obviously, with more tourism, you get more jobs, etc. and so on. There are some benefits to it. Let us know what your thoughts are. It's a deep discussion, but I want to hear just what people think is happening here.